not inevitable. Pay attention. Who are the characters in the story who will be working against the purposes of God, and those who are working with and for the purposes of God? So here we learn that Cain, and of course you know the story, Cain gives into the temptation, murders his brother. He's working against the purposes of God. So then God decides to start to redeem all things. You've heard me preach on this now for multiple weeks, by choosing one man in his family. Turn to Genesis chapter 12. So when God starts to redeem all things, to work against the snake, so to speak, to overcome the snake, what's God going to do? Famously, here we go, Genesis 12, the call of Abram. We've looked at it for like the last 3 weeks. The Lord said to Abraham, or to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So, what we hear here is that God is committed to Abram and his family no matter what. I mean, if you think about it, this is an insane contract or covenant for the Lord to enter into. Because the Lord is saying, I'm giving the full weight of divine authority behind you. And folks who are good to you, I'm going to be good to them. And folks who thwart you, they are going to find themselves hurting. In fact, it uses the language again. You'll be blessed, and those who work against you will be cursed. Those words will come back to be important later. There's this story, and it's apocryphal, and the language is a little colorful. Can I use a little colorful language tonight? Well, I'm going to do it anyway. So, the story is it's like Roosevelt, it's FDR, and either in variations of the story, he's either talking about Trujillo, the dictator in the Dominican Republic, or he's talking about Franco, the dictator in Spain. And this is in the 30s, and they're talking about geopolitics. And Roosevelt says, well, he may be an SOB, but at least he's our SOB. This is the idea, okay? I heard somebody say that's a good way to think about the Lord's commitment to Abraham. Because Abraham is really a flawed character at times, but God is committed to him. Now, I want you to think about this. Think about this question. What happens, and I have it here in your handout. What happens when God completely commits to an imperfect partner? What happens when God completely commits to an imperfect partner? What are the implications of that? I've said it here before in previous Bible studies that we've had, is that the way that we teach the Bible to kids is dead wrong, because we teach the Bible to kids as a series of like spiritual heroes, like Fox's Book of the Martyrs or something. These are great people. So Abraham is a great hero of the faith. And then what happens when you actually read the Bible? And you read from Genesis 10 following, and Abraham goes down to Egypt and lies about the nature of his relationship with his wife. You know what happens? You go, well, this doesn't seem very heroic. And it causes you to kind of step away from the Bible. But the Bible has not told us that we ought to read the Bible like that. On the contrary, that's what we're bringing to it. The Bible never tells us that Abraham is perfect in all of his ways. The Bible tells us that God is perfect in all of his ways. And I think the Bible goes out of its way to show us that Abraham is far from perfect. But God commits to an imperfect partner. Let those who have the ears to hear, let them hear. So God says, I'm going to bless those who are with you. It's as clear as it could possibly be. I am on Team Abram. And from you, everybody's going to experience blessing. So, Abraham, great-hearted founder. I love Abraham. I'm aware of his faults, but I just love him. I love his great-hearted faith and his courage. I just love him. And then Abraham has a son, and often, as is the case nowadays, a son of a really luminous father struggles. And Isaac is not great. He's not great. He's not particularly charismatic. He's not particularly memorable. You kind of skip over him until you get to Abraham's grandchildren. But let's look at that. Let's see what happens here. So you have Isaac, finally the child of the promise. And as happens so many times in the Bible, somebody struggles to get pregnant. You know what, actually, go back to Genesis 3. I think we have this on the screen. Go to Genesis 3:16. I'm going to do 3:16, 17, 18, and 19, actually, just to show you a little bit more of the consequences. This is what happens to human rebellion. To the woman, the Lord God says, I shall multiply your pain in, and for some reason in the ESV it says childbearing, but it's not the Hebrew word. It's not the Hebrew word for labor. And if you have a King James Bible, you'll see a different translation. It's the Hebrew word for conception, for getting pregnant. I shall multiply your pain in getting pregnant. In pain you shall bring forth children. And in this strange sentence, your desire shall be for or contrary to your husband, and he shall rule over you. God says one of the consequences of rebellion is before, children were just going to come. This will be a key piece of the answer to what a blessing is. Children were just going to come, but now children will often come only through difficulty. And now there's going to be this disharmony between men and women, which we, of course, see up to the present moment. Then he says to the man, verse 17, because you listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree, cursed is the ground because of you. So God never curses the man and the woman, but the things around them become like anti-blessings. The ground, which before would have been blessed, is now cursed because of human rebellion. All right, let's keep going. So now we come to Isaac and Rebekah. This is Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25, verses 19 and following. One of the consequences of human rebellion is that pregnancy is going to come with difficulty and pain. And all of the patriarchs in Genesis have trouble with conceiving the next generation. Abraham and Sarah have problems. Isaac and Rebekah have problems. Jacob has no problems with one of his wives, Leah, but with the other wife, Rachel, he does have trouble, and so on. This is part of one of the themes. So here we go. This is about the second one. Abraham is the first. The second generation is Isaac. He's never quite as good as his dad. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. She can't conceive. God said this is one of the consequences. Here we go. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? She has so much pain. So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. God says this is how it's going to be. The older one, who you'd think would be the one who's going to be in charge, actually won't be. It's actually going to be the younger one. God speaks this over Jacob's life before he even sees the light of day. Well, when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Yaakov, Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Okay, let's pause here. So, first generation, Abraham. God tells him, I'm with you no matter what. You're going to be blessed. And through your family, everybody's going to be blessed. It's this ironclad commitment that God makes to Abraham and his family. Isaac comes along. And Isaac is not particularly charismatic or doesn't seem particularly intelligent. But God's with Isaac. And there's some cool stories in there when Isaac just trusts God, like cool stuff just happens. It's like he just lives in a little bit of Eden. There's wells, and wells show up, and God blesses Isaac just as he blessed his dad, because God says, I'm going to be with you. And then Isaac prays when his wife can't conceive, and they're twins. And the mother, Rebekah, prays, and she's told, yeah, there's 2 boys, but the younger is going to be in charge of the older one. And then they come out. And the one is called Esau because he's all red and hairy. And the other one's name is, well, Tell me if this rings any bells. The other one's name is the heel grabber. Have you heard about the word heel talked about before in the Bible? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Bad thing, yes. So, Jacob is like, his name means like the deceiver, but what it really means is like the tripper upper. And you can see how the idiom would work. So in Hebrew, like if you trip somebody, it's like you grab them by the heel. So if you're walking along here and I grab your heel, you're going to fall down. So they call him from the very beginning like the trickster, the deceiver, the heel grabber. Jacob's very name is related to the snake from the very beginning. His very name, his very identity. Abraham has like this life where you like one step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, this stop-start. But his grandson from the very beginning is identified with the snake, the heel grabber. Can I ask you again, what happens when God commits to an imperfect human partner? What do? This is the question that we have to deal with when we come to Jacob. So, what's the next thing that happens here? This is Genesis chapter 25, verses 27 and following. Let's look at this story for a little bit. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man in the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau. Why does he love Esau? Because he likes the food that Esau can hunt and make. But Rebekah loved Jacob. Well, once when Jacob was cooking stew, this is 25-29, Esau came in from the field. He was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me have some of that red stuff, for I'm exhausted." Therefore, his name was called Edom, which means like red. He says, what he really says in Hebrew is, "Let me have some of the red. I'm hungry." Jacob said, and the image is like Jacob just happens to have in his pocket a little contract. "Oh, well, while you ask," he says, "sell me your birthright now." Now, I didn't know that you could sell your birthright, and we don't have it discussed anywhere else in the Bible. But obviously, Esau thinks you can sell off a birthright. Whether you actually can sell the birthright off or not, it's actually irrelevant, because all we know is that Jacob thinks you can and Esau thinks you can, and they're about to entertain some commerce. "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, verse 32, "I'm going to die. What use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Hey, no problem. Just sign right here, initial there, right where you see where the 3 Post-it notes are. Sign, initial. We'll be good. Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. And even the verbs, it's like this sense of like, he eats, wipes his mouth, throws back his chair, grunts, and walks off. And then the narrator gives us this little great detail. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So, there's Abraham, and God says, "Through you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And there's Isaac, and Isaac just barely lives into his father's shadow, just barely steps into his father's shoes, but the next generation comes along, and then you have 2 boys. Well, the obvious question is going to be, which boy is going to take his father's place and be the one who carries on the covenant? Is it going to be Esau or is it going to be Jacob? Now, we've already been told that Jacob is going to be the one in charge of Esau. Rebekah knows that. It's unclear to me if the boys know that. It seems like they don't. We know that Jacob is a deceiver, so you wouldn't think God would choose Jacob. You'd kind of think when they call him the heel grabber, he's exactly the one that God's going to stay as far away from as possible. Then you have Esau. Now, let me just ask you this. So far, knowing what you know, which brother would you choose to build on for the next generation of the covenant? I mean, in some sense, the honest answer is probably neither. I mean, do you want the one who's going to deceive his brother or almost entrap his brother? Or do you want the one who is controlled by his appetites? Which one is patriarch material? In some sense, it seems like neither, but I think very clearly we're being told by the narrator, Esau is not the one. I want some of the red stuff. Sure, what use is it to me? Signs it away. Okay, so here's what happens next. Turn to Genesis 27, 1 and following. We're going to look at this whole chapter. Well, now Isaac is getting old. He's about to die. Verse 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he couldn't see. Now that's going to be an important theme in the rest of Genesis and the rest of the Bible. Seeing clearly. I love when we sing that hymn. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art, thou my best thought by day or by night. Waking or sleeping, thy treasure my sight. I forgot the end of the words there, but it doesn't matter. My point is this. Lord, I want to see the way you see. Remember in Genesis 3, the woman sees the fruit is desirable, and she takes and she eats. And here we have Isaac. He can't even see. He can't even see. We're told by the narrator. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim he couldn't see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son," he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I'm old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now, on the one hand, you read this and you think, well, what's the big deal? I mean, he wants to have a last meal. He loves his son. And in some sense, there's maybe nothing wrong with that. But I think the larger problem is that Isaac already struggles to live into his father's shadow. We already see that Isaac prefers the son whom God is not going to choose. It's like his judgment is off. He can't see really clearly. And the only thing he's thinking about here, as he's about to die, are his appetites. He is a man controlled by his appetites. What happens when God commits to an imperfect human partner? This is one of the central tensions of the Bible. And Isaac is far from a perfect human partner. Now, verse 5. Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, Hey, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. That word again, blessing. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock, bring me two good young goats, that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, that he may bless you before he dies. So if you notice, they're all behaving as if blessing is this finite thing that's got to be grasped. They're all living as if it's a world of scarcity, in which there's not really enough. You better get yours before somebody else gets it. Rebekah, Jacob, Esau, Isaac, they're all behaving exactly the same way. But Jacob, verse 11, said to Rebekah, his mother, and my Hebrew professor in seminary used to say, I don't know why nobody's ever made a needle point out of this verse. Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. You know what I would love? If I started getting emails from folks in our church, and that was like your little email signature at the bottom underneath your name and your business address. Genesis 27:11. My brother is a hairy man. I am a smooth man. That's a good memory verse there. Okay. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. See? There's this curse blessing language, curse blessing language, curse blessing language. We got to have it. What is it? His mother said, let your curse be on me. My son, only obey my voice and go bring them to me. So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. And then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hands of her son Jacob. So verse 18. And if you've ever read the Bible or in Sunday school, you probably know this. Very famous. He went into his father wearing his disguise. His father can't see, remember? And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? And Jacob said, I'm Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success. Isaac said to Jacob, please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. It's very much like Little Red Riding Hood going on here. So Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, who felt him and said, well, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. Then he said, bring it to me that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Okay. It seems to me so interesting here that Jacob thinks a blessing can be stolen through deception. That it's the words, like these performative speech. You speak these words, and they have power in the world, and if you get them by hook or by crook, that's how it's gonna work out. Now, we haven't looked at the word blessing yet. We're about to do that. But just as you've been reading through Genesis so far, and what you know about the Lord, who created all things, does this sound like the way the Lord would have set up the universe? That there's power out there, and it's just kind of out there, and you can deceive somebody and grab it for yourself? The answer is no. This doesn't sound at all the way God has set up the universe to work. Let's keep going. So Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, verse 26. My son, he came and he kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments, and he blessed him, and he said, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Those words again. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me. His father Isaac said to him, who are you? He answered, I am your son, your firstborn, Esau. Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it before you came, and I blessed him? Yes, and he shall be blessed. As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me, even me also, O my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing. Esau said, is he not rightly named Yaakov, the heel grabber, the deceiver, the cheater? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? And Isaac answered and said to Esau, behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice, and he wept. Okay. I find just the pathos of this story to be piercing. The son who wants desperately to be approved of by his father. We're going to see it a little bit later, that he knows that Isaac and Rebekah don't even like his wives, and so Esau tries to get a new wife, yet another one, to earn his father's love. I mean, it's the classic story. We've all seen it. Probably many of us have lived it. You have the amazing founder, Abraham. You have his less talented and less charismatic son, Isaac, who just doesn't seem to know how to be the right type of father. Now, is this because of the Abraham and Isaac binding on Mount Moriah in Genesis 22? We don't know. Is it because of the sins of Sarah and Abraham that caused just generational discord in the family? Probably. And here you have Esau desperate to receive a blessing, a word from his father, and Isaac said, after he trembles, which we'll come back to, can't do it. So here's the question I want to ask. Why not? What is a blessing? Why can't Isaac do it? So let's go back to maybe the first or second page of the Bible, back to Genesis chapter 1, verses 22 and following. We're going to learn about what the word blessing is, and it's going to shed light onto the rest of this story. Actually, go to Genesis 1:20. Genesis 1:20. And God said, "Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens." So God created the great Tanim, the sea monsters, and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them. This is the first time the word blessing occurs in the Bible. And God's going to define it for us here. And now, from now on to the rest of the Bible, this is what blessing means, which means its antonym, curse, is the opposite of what blessing is. Look at what it is here. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." Genesis chapter 1, verse 22. Blessing is when God shares his life-giving power with his creation. It's such a beautiful picture of God. He's so generous. And by that I mean he's always so excited to share and give away his gifts. It's like going to somebody's lake house. "Hey, the boats are all gassed up. I want you to take them out. Would you please? Hey, the back porch has a cooler. It's filled with ice-cold drinks. I want you to open the cooler." Inside, we left a fully stocked pantry with lots of Halloween candy for the kids. We don't eat it. My wife won't let me eat it. Please eat it. This is kind of God's picture. Like, I have all this cool stuff. I want you to use it. Take the jet skis out. Please. The keys are there. It would bless me if you did it. God says, "Be fruitful and multiply." So blessing is when God gives away. He shares his life-giving power with his creation. The creation is contingent on God. It's not self-sufficient. God holds everything in the palm of his hand, so to speak. If God removes his hand, the whole thing just vanishes. And yet God allows us to play a part in what he's doing. And he's so kind and generous and just great-hearted that even like the birds and the fish, and yes, fish can be beautiful at times, but have you ever really looked a fish in the eye? It is one of the dumbest creatures you have ever seen. And even the fish, God says, you're not the best things that I have made, but I still love you. And I want you to make more little fishies. Blessing is God sharing life-giving power. And then I have another little definition there. Blessing is about producing more life in abundance. Blessing is about more. It's about abundant production. Now, in one sense, what blessing is literally procreation. More people, more fish, more birds. That's part of it. But then anytime more is made, that's also blessing. So you have the apple tree, and it produces apples. So God blessed the tree, and the tree produces apples. It has its own seed in the fruit. We learned that in Genesis 1. But then you can take the apples and you can peel them and you can chop them and lay them out after you've already kneaded the pie crust. And then you put it all together and you make a pie. You've made more out of what was already there. That's blessing. So blessing is always more, which means curse is always less. Diminishment. Now think back to what the Lord says about the ground in Genesis chapter 3. Before their rebellion, they have work to do in the garden. The man is put in the garden, it says in Genesis chapter 2, to work it and to keep it. So they have work to do, but it's not work. It's work. It's not work. I'm so tired. It's just work. It's like you just go, you just do it, and it just works. You just plant a seed and the tree grows up. I've used this image before, but I just love it. I love how Lewis describes the fecundity of Narnia in its early days in The Magician's Nephew, his novel. And somehow, through an anecdote I don't need to give, a Victorian lamppost from London has been brought into Narnia, and somebody throws it, and it just sticks in the ground, and it grows up into a lamppost. It's like the lamppost is rooted in Narnia. It's so fertile that even dead iron from earth now becomes part of the living part of creation. It just shines out. It just shines out. I think that's the picture of a pre-fallen world. Now, we get glimpses of this now. So they'll talk about athletes, right? When they're just like in the zone, or maybe you've heard of the phrase in the flow. Maybe you've seen this with magicians, or musicians, maybe magicians as well, with musicians and other people, and you're watching them do their thing, and you can just see they are just gifted by God to do that thing, and it's so smooth. I mean, when Aaron Rodgers is really dialed in, it looks easy. He's doing one of the hardest things in the world, and it just looks easy. When Aaron Judge is just going for a record season, and he can hit 62 home runs, it's like you can't stop him from doing it. This is like a picture of like a pre-fallen humanity. And we get glimpses of it even now. It's just smooth. It's like frying pan on a hot skillet. Just easy, easy, easy. This is what work was like before the fall. And then after the fall, God says what? The ground is now going to be cursed because of you. Let's go there again. Genesis chapter 3. Is it 3:17? Is that right? Yeah, 3:17. Look at this. Genesis 3:17. Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you should don't eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Your rebellion causes problems in the natural world. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. Verse 19, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. God says what before was going to be smooth, now it's going to be hard. And the ground is not immediately going to produce the things that you want it to produce. So blessing is more, life, ease, and curse is less, diminishment, difficulty. So now let's go back. Genesis 12. The famous words to Abraham. What does God say when he calls him? Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Verse 2, I will make of you a great nation, Genesis 12:2, and I will bless you. Abraham, I am going to make it that when you put your hand to something, cool stuff happens. Life happens. Eden happens. And then you have all those strange stories with Abraham. He talks to a guy, they dig a well, the well's there. If you're friends with Abraham, you have it made. If you work against Abraham, it doesn't go well with you. Even Lot, who's got to be one of the worst nephews in all of history, he's a total idiot. Even Lot gets like blessed through Abraham. It's like you just get associated with Abraham and blessing happens. And the opposite is this. Whoa. Him, verse 3, who dishonors you, I will curse. In other words, when people work against you, Abraham, it's not going to work out for them. It's not going to work for them. And in you, everybody's going to find blessing through your family. It's an incredible commitment that God makes. I am going to particularly use your family to bring life abundant into the world. So why does Isaac refuse to bless Esau? Well, maybe the answer is because really only one son can be blessed. Okay, turn to Genesis chapter 17. Turn to Genesis 17. Now, Abraham has been told by God, I am going to give you a son, and through your family, the whole world's going to be blessed. And this is the central challenge of Abraham's life, to trust God for the formation of the family. So here we are in Genesis 17. This is after Abraham and Sarah have sexually abused their Egyptian slave Hagar and forced her to carry Abraham's child, and then they turn through Sarah on that slave woman and her child. It is a bitter, bitter story. And if tradition is accurate, and I'm not an expert on this, we are still bearing the fruit of Abraham and Sarah's lack of trust today in the fight between the Arab peoples and the Jewish peoples. Centuries later, when you don't trust God, people get hurt. Well, verse 15, Genesis 17:15. God says, I'm promising to you, Abraham, you're my man. I'm committed to you, buddy. God said, verse 15, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah. Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her. Or blessing. Blessing is more. It's the production of life. She is seen to be barren. She can't have children. God says, I'm going to bless her. And moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? I get the impression that it's not that he's laughing in delight, but he's laughing in almost derision. All right, Lord, this is ridiculous. Look at this next one. Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God, I actually do have a son. It's not with the woman I'm supposed to have a son with. It's with this Egyptian slave that we abused. But I have a son. Oh, that Ishmael would live by you. God said, no. Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac, the laughing one. He laughs. Laughter. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. Isaac is the one. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have, what's the next word? Blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. So can blessing only come to one son? We've already been told in Genesis, no. God himself blesses Ishmael. Ishmael's going to be fruitful too. God says, no. This special covenant that I'm making, that's going to bear my message to the world, my message of blessing. This special covenant is only coming narrowly through Isaac. But blessing is available everywhere, which shouldn't surprise us. God delights in blessing. He loves it. So why doesn't Isaac bless Esau? Let's keep going. So now, and I have a little note here at the bottom of maybe the third page. God's blessing is meant to be given to everyone. It's about abundance, not scarcity. But the special family of Abraham are the ones that are supposed to carry the message of blessing. So let's go back to Genesis 28. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 27 and look at this story again. So here we go. Starting in verse 1. We have Isaac who can't see, Genesis 27:1. And what does he want? Verse 4, I want some food. I want you to make me my food. and then I'm going to bless you before I die. So we have this man who can't see, and he's controlled by his appetites. He wants what he wants. He wants to take it. And then you have Rebekah, verses 5 and following, who doesn't want the blessing to go to Esau, but for some reason wants it to go to Jacob, and she hatches the plan. They put on the disguise. Jacob comes in, verses 18 and following, tricks his father, and his father blesses him. Verse 27, Isaac came near and kissed Jacob. Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, the smell of my son is like this field that God has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. And then finally, verse 29, cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. And then, verse 32, when Esau comes in, Isaac said, who are you? He answered, I'm your son, your firstborn Esau. Then Isaac trembled violently. Why does Isaac tremble? This is my theory. Isaac trembles because though he is old and infirm and blind, though he is really not much of a patriarch, he trembles in that moment because he realizes that the purposes of God cannot be thwarted by human sin and rebellion. That one of the things that happens when God commits to an imperfect human partner is that God's ways will be realized. I think Isaac trembles in awe. It's like that moment in Isaiah 6 when Isaiah has a vision of the heavenly throne room of God. Isaiah says, woe be to me, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I come from a people of unclean lips. What happens here, I think, is that Isaac encounters the transcendent holiness of God. He is moved, and filled with a sense of dread, not of fear, but like capital F, fear. In fact, later on, God will be described as the fear of Isaac. Isaac trembles. Because remember what the Lord told Rebekah in the womb. The younger one will be in charge of the older one. And here, despite all the lying and shenanigans and all their stupidities, what God said would happen has, in fact, happened. And then Esau says, well, why can't, verse 38, why can't you bless me, Father? And Isaac says, well, I've already given my blessing. So why can't Isaac bless Esau? Here I think is the answer. Because he thinks he can. Because Isaac totally misunderstands what blessing is. Isaac is restricted by his restrictions he's placed on God. Isaac thinks that a blessing is somehow earned by like family position or something. We've already seen that God just blesses the fish and the birds. He blesses Isaac and he blesses Ishmael. God just can't help but bless. He loves to bless. The reason Isaac can't bless Esau is because he won't. There's nothing magic about blessing. And by the way, human beings don't control blessing power. It comes from God. The reason Isaac doesn't bless Esau is because Isaac does not understand God's purposes of blessing and abundance in the world. Isaac has this scarcity mindset. And the really sad part is that everybody else in the story does too. Rebekah does, Esau does, and Jacob does. Now, I'm not going to get too ahead of the story about Jacob. I have one more thing I want to look at here. But in fact, Jacob's life is about trying to earn the blessing that God has already said to his grandfather, to his father, and then to his mother, and then later to himself. God has already said, Jacob, I am with you. I'm going to bless you. But Jacob is one of these hard-headed guys that thinks he's got to earn the thing that is given as a free gift. And Jacob does a lot of harm in his life because he refuses just to receive the blessing. He thinks he has to earn it. Is this not our situation? Thinking that somehow we have to earn the blessings of God, that God just wants to give. We just listen and we just trust him. The reason Isaac doesn't bless Esau is because Isaac is wrong. That's why. I don't think God is stingy with his blessings. He wants to pour it out. He's going to use Jacob as the particular founder of this people. But Esau is also could be blessed if only Isaac had trusted God enough to realize it. Before we close for the evening, there's something else I want to tell you about Jacob in the next amazing story that happens. But I want to pause here and open it up for questions tonight. Just a second, Jack. Open it up for questions and see what folks want to ask. The middle school and high school kids do receive a bribe if they ask a question, so they're eager to do so. I'm happy to ask a question, go over a question about anything we've gone over, but also anything else in the Bible so far that we've talked about. And we have a microphone. It's a box. Where is it? Oh, Hannah, you want to throw it over here? Mm-hmm. You can throw it, I think. Okay, speak right into it, and I'll repeat it if we can hear it.
Okay, so in the end of verse 34 of Genesis 25, what does it mean by, so Esau despised his birthright? Does that mean he physically hated it, or does that mean, he kind of, didn't care about it?
So tell me the citation again, Genesis 25.
Genesis 25, verse 34.
Genesis 25, 34. After Esau says, give me the red stuff, Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, ate and drank, and rose and went his way, and thus Esau despised his birthright. What does it mean by that, Jack? I don't think it means that he hated it. It means it was nothing to him. It's nothing. I don't care. I don't care if I have it or not. So he doesn't show respect for it. He despises it. That's what happens there. Okay. Yeah, and it's a sign, I think, Esau is clearly not fit to be one of the patriarchs. He's controlled by his appetites. Later on in life, he's kind of sympathetic. We'll see later in the story arc of Jacob and Esau's life. But Esau is just, he's too much like the animals, just controlled by his desires. And I think the narrator is telling us Esau's not any good. The problem is his brother doesn't look any better. His brother is a heel grabber. He's the snake. And yet he's the one that God decides to use. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but and I preached on this at Asbury Seminary last week. I think the beautiful quality of Jacob is his unbelievable tenacity. He holds on no matter what. He holds on no matter what. The sad thing about Jacob is that he's often holding on in a way that brings difficulty rather than blessing. It's good to be tenacious, but you got to be tenacious to the right things, not the wrong things. And I think that's the lesson that Jacob struggles his whole life with. Yeah, other questions? Yeah, back here, Matthew.
So it was a new thought for me for the Jacob not being able to bless both because
Isaac not being able
to bless both. Is it possible that he, in that moment when he shudders or trembles, that he realized that the prediction from before meant that he couldn't bless because God had already said this is what's going to happen?
So Matthew's question is the reason Isaac trembles when he realizes that he's been duped. He realizes, wow, I can't actually bless Esau because God said from the beginning the older would serve the younger. I don't think so because of what happens with Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael. God has clearly already said, Isaac is the one, and I'm going to bless the socks off Ishmael too. So the covenant has to happen through one of the brothers. But I don't think blessing has to come. I think that we've already seen blessing can be just abundantly given. In fact, what's weird is that God blesses through Abraham's family the non-chosen peoples, the ones that make friends with Abraham and Isaac. It goes good for them too. Yeah. And what's also interesting, we didn't get to this crazy story of Abraham and Melchizedek. Abraham and Melchizedek, we skipped over that story. Melchizedek, a pagan priest, is the one who blesses Abraham. So God is not stingy about blessing. He just opens the faucet and wants to bless everybody. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, right over here. Yes. So let me find. So the question is about Esau's marriage. Yeah. Okay. It's Genesis 26:34. Poor Esau. He can't do anything right. Genesis 26:34. To me, we'll see this later. By the way, we have a Bible study in 2 weeks. I'm telling you, do not miss that one. It's going to be way better than this one. It's so interesting about Joseph and his brothers. And Esau reminds me a little bit of Reuben. We're going to get there. He just can't get it right with his dad. Okay, Genesis 26:34. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath. By the way, if we have any pregnant ladies, that's a good name for a girl. Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. So who are the Hittites is the question, where they're coming from. So Genesis 10, turn to Genesis 10. La, 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 la. Where is it? Genesis 10:15. Genesis 10:15. Genesis 10:15. This is the table of the nations. This is the spreading out of the peoples. We looked at this at our last Bible study a little bit. Canaan, and he's not a good guy, fathered Sidon, he's not good, and Heth. Heth is where we get the word Hittites. So these people are descended from the bad son of Noah, the non-chosen side of Noah. So it's not real good. Yeah, they don't worship the Lord. And verse 35, these women, these daughters-in-law, oh boy, they make life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. So look at this. I love this. This is 27:46. This is after the stealing of the blessing. This is after all this has happened. Genesis 27:46. Rebekah says to Isaac, I loathe my life because of these Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? Just kill me now if I have another daughter-in-law like this. So that's why Jacob has to run away. She's trying to cover for him to get him out of there because his brother's trying to kill him. But Rebekah says, I can't stand these daughters-in-law. So then just one other quick point. This is Genesis 28, Genesis 28:8. It's kind of sad. Another verse here, Genesis 28:8. When Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father, he went to Ishmael and took as his wife, besides the wives he had, this other lady. So he's trying to marry again to kind of prove himself to his dad. Poor old Esau just can't do it right. It makes me sad for him. Yeah, good question. Other remarks. Yeah, way back up here. Hey, Hannah, just chuck it. Let's see how far it will go. Just don't kill anybody. All right, pass it on back. It's okay, it doesn't hurt. And if it does, act like it doesn't. Pass it on back further. Toss it over your head. Way back there. I can't see who that is back there. There you go. Yes, young lady. Ask me your question.
Okay, so if part of the blessing is being able to multiply more life, then what about the people that die before they can multiply? Okay,
so the question is, if God's desire is blessing, then what about, and blessing is about multiplying. Sometimes, it's literally about procreation at times, but the form of that blessing takes is not just procreation, it's also just doing more with it. I think it's a sign of blessing when you take mud and you bake it in the oven, you make bricks, and then you build like a bridge out of it. That would also be like you're doing more with it. That's an example of being created in the image of God. Well, then how come sometimes people die before they're able to do that, either before they can have their own children or before they're able to create anything? Why is that? The answer is because human rebellion carries consequences with it. That's really the answer. Is that God always wants to bless. Always, always, always. The problem is that God is working with imperfect partners. So Jacob would be a great example. God has already said, I'm with you. I am with you. I want to bless you and bless people through you. It's the promise he made to his grandfather. But Jacob goes through life having to take. He has a scarcity mindset. And Jacob does a lot of damage with that mindset. So the answer to your question is, when we refuse to trust God to provide, when we refuse to see the world as being filled with abundance, what happens is we act in a way that brings about the opposite of blessing. What is war if not a failure to believe that God is a God of abundance? And war literally means murder. It means death. Now, to contrast this to Jesus' attitude toward the world, consider the lilies. They neither toil nor spin. But I tell you, even Solomon in all of his glory is not arrayed like one of these. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself, Jesus says. Jesus says, what does Jesus pray in the prayer? Give us today our daily bread. Just give us what we need today. Jesus has this picture. The Son has this picture of the Father just graciously giving all things always, always can be trusted. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but this is a world in which things do seem to be scarce. Perhaps. But the Son of God goes to the cross and dies for the world and is raised again, which means there isn't actually scarcity. Even death is not permanent because of the gracious gift of the Son of God. So, what it means for us, I think, is the constant challenge every day, which is why Jesus has us pray it every day, to say, God, help me trust you today that you're going to give me what I need today. Give me what I need today. Oh, what happens when you have a little bit, but you put it in the hands of the Lord? Let's say, for example, pick a random number. There were 5 loaves, let's say, and 2 fish, right? What happens? Abundance, abundance, abundance. You put it in the Lord's hands, and he takes what little you have and does something with it because he just blesses. He can't help it. Other questions or thoughts? Yeah, back over here. You can, before we get the mic to you, you can shout it out, and I'll see if I can hear it. Yes, this is Romans chapter 9, and Paul is doing a Romans 9:13. Sorry, Hannah, we already got the question. Or that's Kate. Is that Kate? Yes. How come? So Paul in the book of Romans is making this like rabbinical argument, and he's contrasting Jacob and Esau with God's commitment to Israel, and what does that mean? Why does he say, Jacob I have loved, verse 13, and Esau I have hated? Well, this is a quotation not from Genesis, but from Malachi, the Israelite prophet Malachi. And this is a Semiticism. It's a contrast. It says, so a better way to think about this is when Jesus says, right? Unless you hate your father and mother, you can't be one of my disciples. Well, Jesus doesn't mean in that instant, I need you to actually work to destroy them. What he's saying is, the contrast needs to be so great between your commitment to faithfulness to the Lord that it's going to seem like you're hating your parents. I mean, Jesus says, honor your father and your mother. He's in favor of the 10 Commandments. So here Paul is quoting Malachi, who is making the point that God shows his favor to Jacob and his sons because they are the ones who carry on the covenant. Not that God can't wait to rub Esau's nose in it, I think is the idea. It's just a Semiticism. I love the one, I hate the other. Yeah. Good question, though. Other questions? Jake? Yeah, okay. I didn't plant you to ask that question, but I'm glad you did. The question is, what happens when God completely commits to an imperfect partner? When God completely commits to an imperfect partner. I've been saying that's what God does. He chooses Abraham, then his family, then Jacob. Jacob is really imperfect. What happens? I'm not trying to be Sunday school here, but you know the answer, don't you? What happens is the cross. That's what happens. When God completely commits to an imperfect human partner, what happens is the cross. That's why we must see the whole Bible as a narrative arc that leads to Jesus. What happens when God commits, perfect, loving God, can't wait to bless, overflowing with steadfast love. When he commits to an imperfect human partner, ultimately what happens is that God takes the pain of the world on himself. He dies in place of the world. What happens over time is the cross when you play it out far enough. That's what happens. Other questions or remarks? Yes, down here, Henry. Why don't you wait for your sister to give you the mic?
Does Jacob live up to being a heel grabber?
Does Jacob live up to being a heel grabber? It's a great question. I think ultimately, yes. Jacob is a very complex character in the Bible. And I think y'all know, you've heard me say it a couple of times now, in different times, and I'll keep saying it. The Bible doesn't conform to our neat little systems, and where everything's neat, there's no problem, it's all. The Bible is about life, and life is complex. It doesn't totally fit. I mean, you learn in school that Abraham Lincoln is like this amazing guy. And he is an amazing guy, and he also has flaws. Like both are actually true at the same time. And it's a sign of our cultural immaturity that we are unable to see our historical forebears with any kind of nuance. I don't know why. It shouldn't be that hard. All of us have friends, and our friends have some good qualities and some bad qualities, and we know that. It's not hard. I bet you could tell me your 5 best friends and all their worst qualities, and you could probably just go real quick. Yep. It shouldn't be that hard to think, well, this person, Washington, was great in this way and flawed in this way. It shouldn't be that hard, but as a culture, we're so infantilized right now that we're unable to do that. So Jacob is a problematic character. He has this amazing moment, which we're going to talk about on Sunday, where he wrestles with God all night. And it's both a heartbreaking thing and a really inspiring thing because his character is so strong that God has to punch him in the groin is the only way for him to learn, and that he limps the rest of his life. But he's not totally perfect after that. He changes in that moment. And he gains a new name, the name Israel, one who wrestles with God. But he's not totally perfect from then on either. It's not a neat kind of Christian movie. It doesn't all work out. He's just flawed like a lot of us are. But I do think that Jacob's earlier struggles, particularly the problems he has with his wives and his sons and that whole deal, which we'll get to, I think that does shape Jacob to be the right one to carry on the covenant. And as we'll see at the very end, and this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, Jacob is completely clear-sighted when it comes to picking the son who's going to carry on the covenant. So we're going to look at the next Bible study, so to be continued. We're going to look at this really important question. Which of the 12 sons of Jacob will be the one who is going to be the one who carries on the covenant? And Jacob, as an old man, he sees it totally clearly. So in this case, perhaps, Henry, he is not like his father, Isaac. Jacob is able to perfectly see who the right son is to carry on the covenant, but that's in 2 weeks. Any other questions? Yes, back over here and then over here. I love this question. The question about Genesis 18. Let's just turn this really quickly. Genesis 18. Beautiful story. Beautiful. Okay. Here's what it says. I'm going to read to you what the text says. Okay? That's how we should always do. Let's read the text. And the Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat in the door of his tent in the heat of the day. So who has appeared to Abraham? Who? What does the text tell us? The Lord. The Lord appears to Abram. Verse 2. Abram lifts up his eyes and looks, and there's 3 guys standing there. And he saw them. He ran from the tent. He bowed down. He said, "Oh, Lord, if I found favor, don't pass by. Come over here. Sit here. I'll make you some food. Let's visit." And then he goes to Sarah and says, quick, make some food. Let's have them over. It's a great picture of hospitality. All I'm telling you is what the text says is the Lord appears to Abraham, and there's 3 of them. That's what it says. The Lord appeared to Abraham, and there's 3 of them. To me, this is pretty clearly the kind of verse that really only makes sense in light of the church. And you look back, Father, Son, and Spirit. I think it's clearly a Trinitarian sort of glimpse in the Old Testament. Now, the Jews, of course, don't have language for that because they don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. But I think very clearly you look back and you go, oh my gosh, the Lord, and there's 3. And they don't have that vocabulary worked out because God has not revealed himself fully to his people until later, until the Jesus and the falling of the Holy Spirit. But I think that's what's going on there. And then I love Abraham. He's so hospitable. It's gorgeous. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous picture. Other questions? There's one back over here. Yes, sir.
Can names be a blessing, or can they also be like a curse?
Can names be a curse? I don't think a name can be a curse, but I think the way, I'm trying to think here, the way people in the Bible respond to work with God or work against God leads them in the position of blessing or curse. I think that's what happens with Cain. When God says to Cain, watch out, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. In other words, it's not given that Cain has to work for the snake, but Cain chooses to let it happen. And so, again, in Genesis 3, God does not curse the people so much as the consequences of the things around him. It's a little bit of maybe splitting hairs, but that's what happens there. And I don't think names, it's not so much that names determine who people are as that people's actions determine who they are and whether they live into the name or work contrary to the name. Because Jacob his name is the heel grabber, and he acts often like the heel grabber, is still the one who ultimately is used by God. And at the end of his life, he is able to see clearly who the right son is who should carry on the covenant. So human character is mixed in the Bible. There are not totally purely good guys and totally purely bad guys. Even Elijah is one of my favorites. I love Elijah. Even Elijah has this moment where he doesn't trust God at all and wants God to kill him in 1 Kings chapter 19. So, yeah, other questions? And then I have one thing I want to end with here. Okay, let's end here. I want to show you something really cool. So let's look at our last thing with Jacob here. Turn to Genesis chapter 28. I love Jacob. Yes, he's problematic, but I just love him. So verse 28, Isaac sends Jacob away. He sent away ostensibly to find a wife, but really to flee from his murderous brother, because Esau wants to kill Jacob. And we've seen this movie before. Cain kills his brother. So look at verse 10. Jacob 28:10. James, right here in a second. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place, and he stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached into the heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. And the land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. And in you all your offspring shall, and in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I'm with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. It's incredible. And then Jacob awoke from his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. This beautiful idea that God is actually present. And our problem is not that we're far from God. Our problem is that we don't have the eyes to see him. And he was afraid, verse 17, in the terror that comes from being with the living God. God is not Santa Claus. God isn't just pat you on the head. The Lord is other. He's a consuming fire. He was afraid. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, Bethel, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel. But the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, if God will be with me, will keep me, I'm going to give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, I'm going to come back to this place, and then the Lord shall be my God. And this shall be God's house, and I'm going to give away 1/10 of all that I have. So Jacob here has explicit reason from God himself to believe that God is with him. And he's still going to struggle. He's still going to struggle. But this picture of Jacob lying down at night, having the amazing vision of God, and then dedicating that place. This story is told in one of our hymns. And I love this hymn. I love this hymn. It's one of my favorite hymns. And it's one of those things that I didn't really pay attention to until a few years ago. Yes, so James, what number is it? James, can you hear? What number is it, James?
528.
528 in your hymnal. It's the hymn, Nearer My God to Thee. I want us to sing it as we close here. I love this hymn. Now, 528 in your hymnals. It's from 1841. It's a song, you can stand up. It's a song of being close to God no matter what. Listen to the lyrics before we sing it. Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, e'en though it be a cross that raises me. Whatever it takes to be close to you, God, whatever it takes, I want that to happen. Whatever it takes, I want to be close. Second verse, this is Jacob. Though like the wanderer, the sun gone down, darkness be over me, my rest the stone. Remember, he lays down on the stony ground. Yet in my dreams I'd be nearer, my God, to thee. Verse 3, there let the way appear, Jacob's ladder, steps unto heaven. All that thou sendest me in mercy given. Angels to beckon me nearer, my God, to thee. Verse 4, then with my waking thoughts bright with thy praise, out of my stony griefs Bethel I will raise. So by my woes to be nearer, my God, to thee, even if it's in the sadness, as long as I'm close to you, God, I'm good. And then finally, or if on joyful wing cleaving the sky, sun, moon, and stars forgot, upward I fly, still all my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Isn't that gorgeous? One of the things I really want our young people to know is the stories of the Scripture, and then to see the great hymns of the faith, how they take those stories and make something beautiful out of it. Can we sing this together? The Reverend James Lambert's going to play with us on the piano. Let's do all 5 verses. All 5. Here we go. Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, e'en though it be a cross that raiseth me, still all my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Verse 2, Jacob's story. Though like the wanderer, the sun gone down, darkness be over me, I rest a stone. Yet in my dreams I'd be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Verse 3. There let the way appear, steps unto heaven. It's Jacob's ladder. All that thou sendest me in mercy give. Angels to beckon me nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Verse 4, then with my waking thoughts, then with my waking thoughts, bright with thy praise, out of my stony griefs, out of my stony griefs, Bethel I'll raise. So by my woes to be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Let's do the last one, just the voices. Or if on joyful wing, leaving the sky, sun, moon, and stars forgot, upward I fly, still all my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. God promises to Abraham and his family, I'm with you no matter what. And Jesus proves it. Therefore, go in peace. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace. And may the blessings of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among us and remain with us and work around us until we meet again. And all God's people said, amen. Go in peace. See you this coming weekend.